3 changes to my Summoner Necro allowed me to ridiculously increase the damage.
Notice I don't have a skill to do that. What?
Make my minions survive even more, and also be able to run away from these pesky one-shot mechanics that Lilith is throwing at you. And yes, this is me at level 95 doing Uber Lilith because I really wanted to take on the challenge. At this point, the Mendon Summoner has become so powerful, it just walks through tier 100 nightmare dungeons, blasts everything left and right, and is the absolute undying calamity you want a Necromancer to be. Let me break down what changed, build link with everything in the description below, and then present you the Uber Lilith kill in an unusual way, and you will actually have to rate if this counts as a legit kill or not in the comments below. Let's first talk about what changed and how we're suddenly dealing so much damage. We're playing the Ring of Mendeln Shadow Summoner. First and foremost, because you can blight, and then you can play Supernatural Blight for the 15 times increased damage to your minions and yourself. The minion damage is just to have a little bit more into Barber, and yourself is to boost the Mendeln procs as high as possible. That is obviously being played together with Bone Prison into Ghastly Bone Prison to make enemies permanently vulnerable as long as they're inside the Bone Prison, standing inside the Pool of Light the Bone Prison does. And as you know, the Bone Prison does, for some reason, overcharge lucky hits. Let's say at least higher the lucky hit chance by 50%. It doesn't permanently trigger, but it triggers quite a lot. Then, one thing that changed for the Uber Lilith try, and in general is actually really good, is 5 points in Blood Mist. Yes, I used to play 1 out of 5, but I do need the cooldown as low as possible. And as you can see, if I have 1 point in, it's 21.53 seconds. With more points in, it's at 18.62 seconds. That together with a cooldown reduction on exploding corpses in Blood Mist, plus your Decrepify cooldown reduction, has it always up. So you never come in this situation where you get one hit by Lilith or in a tier 100 dungeon. I essentially turned this into a little bit of an Infinimist Shadow Mendon Summoner. Now we're not playing Iron Maiden anymore and the Enhanced Iron Maiden for the 50% bonus shadow damage. No, we replaced that through something else. We're still going for Decrepify with a cooldown reduction. As you might notice, there's only 2 out of 3 points in here and 1 out of 3 in Skeletal Masteries. What? Well, I'll come to that. Because I needed points. At first, we also have Plague Corpse Tendrils do vulnerable. Now, that's kind of like a double vulnerable with the Ghastly Bone Prison, right? But you don't always have Bone Prison up, but you always want vulnerable up. And I noticed that in my fight versus Uber Lilith, that there's some overlapping moments where you do not have vulnerable up due to the Bone Prison expiring or due to you having to reset the Bone Prison to have your Skeletal Warriors actually walk up close. That's where the Plague Corpse Tendrils come in nice to really have a maximum uptime of vulnerable, and the Blood Orbs are anyways bugged. Yes, there's a Blood Orb transfusion way to play, but honestly, didn't even need that for Lilith. Now, what I did change is I put a bonus point into Reaper's Pursuit. I usually play 1 point only in here, and that is 5% bonus movement speed. But I have to say that with a 15% bonus movement speed, I've been able to move faster in general through tier 100 dungeons, so giving this build more speed. But also with this Reaper's Pursuit on, and then the Bone Prison on your opponents, you have, how long is Bone Prison up? 6 seconds? 6 seconds actual fast movement boost. And if you put a Corpse Explosion afterwards, that's another 6 seconds of movement boost as well. So you constantly are running with 15% bonus movement speed, and that is so important to avoid the one hit that Lilith does with these pesky red thingies that fly around. You'll see in the try. Now down here it gets a little bit weird. There's 1 point in Aspiring Leader. Yes, we want the bonus attack speed for you and your minions. And I wish I could put 3 points in, but I just really don't have these 3 points right now. And then there's Death Defense with 3 points. Your minions cannot lose more than 30% of their maximum life. And this works plenty well together with a little bit of health boost. The warriors have less than the mages because the mages are the key part, because shadow mages stack Shadow Blight, and that's pretty fantastic. You want that. So with these 3 points, they barely die even against Lilith. And if they die, they get just quickly race summoned by your Sacrilegious Heart. This gets followed up by the Bone Storm. And yes, we finally are playing Bone Storm. Not for the 15% damage reduction, that's a nice to have. It's more for the 20% bonus critical strike chance, which brings us up to 50%, and then with Grasping Veins up to 74% of critical strike chance. Last but not least, the Shadow Blight proc. And the Shadow Blight proc is extremely interesting because we put on a new aspect that allows the Shadow Blight to itself already crit almost for millions, and that's what you really would like to see. And yes, this is a proc that can crit. So 75%, 74% crit chance with 400% critical strike damage plus also applies to this plus all your shadow multipliers in general. Now we're playing the Reapers and the Shadow Mages, and the Shadow Mages for the double attack, not for the stun. The stun doesn't actually does that much more stagger, so it wasn't really worth it to look into that. Now equipment wise, what did we change? We're still playing the Ring of Mendeln, obviously, with the Sacrilegious Heart for the auto triggers. That gets followed up by the Band of Ultimate Shadows, where Bone Storm is now also shadow damage. And this is extremely important, because if the Bone Storm is shadow damage, it continuously triggers Shadow Blight. And if it continuously triggers Shadow Blight, then if you stack the Shadow Blight key passive 10 times, you get 120% bonus damage. And that is continuously up. Shows a tiny plus 10 above your XP bar. And yeah, that with the Bone Storm and all your other shadow damage, it just never goes away. So you're continuously doing 120% bonus damage. If you actually put it on the amulet over the Grasping Veins on the amulet, that would be another 180% bonus damage, and then only 20% critical strike chance from the Grasping Veins, which I think would also be a fine solution. Now we do have the Barber Heart with 2.7 seconds. I wish I had 4 against Lilith, but 2.7 seconds is nice for general use, especially with a 15 times multiplier. Very important on my offhand. Each time the Shadow Blight key passive deals damage to enemies, it increases the next Shadow Blight's key passive damage within 10 seconds by 30%. That stacks up to 5 times. That's 150, can go up to 200, and after the patch up to 225% bonus damage or the Shadow Blight key passive. So you have 3000 damage times 225% times 120%. And then with the ability to critical strike with 337% plus another 48% multiplicative on your critical strike damage. Yeah, and that's not all your multipliers. That's just the basics, the 20s, the 22s, the 36, the 18% bonus. They're all missing. Now I did change my boots to have Blood Mist of Corpse Explosion to really always have Blood Mist up, to never come in that situation, especially since the gameplay loop changed that you currently have to Blood Mist in to apply the Decrepit Aura, even in tier 100 dungeons, as you can see in the background. It's super efficient and fun to do, but you also always have it up this way. Very good. Now on my pants, we're still playing the aspect of the Hardened Bones, but we could actually have that go away for the Disobedience, because Disobedience buffs me and the minions the same as Hardened Bones does for my minions. So it's a little bit of a waste to actually play Hardened Bones at this point. On the gloves, we're having Bone Prison needs a pool of blight, and that blight is actually the blight that applies the 15% bonus damage to you and your minions to then supercharge the Mendeln even more. Then more mages, more warriors, and on top of that, max life, total armor, max life, total armor, max minion life max life for me, total armor, damage reduction, all stats, intelligence, dex on the boots for maximum critical strike chance, my ring having critical strike chance and max life, then obviously Ring of Mendeln, and your offhand definitely wants to have max minion life, and well, it's in all stats. On your weapon, I'm running critical strike damage, vulnerable damage, in all stats. I'm currently at 1000 in, kinda, maybe a little bit overdoing that. In the Paragon board, we didn't do any changes. We're still running the control glyph into the Send of Death board together with the Damage While Healthy Imbiber, followed up by the Cult Leader board together with a Dead Razor glyph on minion damage reduction and a little bit more minion damage, because end of the day, every damage that goes into the Barber is more damage, with a Flesh Eater into the Essence for maximum critical strike damage bonus. And technically I could take these 2 more nodes to do even more damage, and that gets followed up with the Wither board on shadow damage. And as I get level 100, I'll probably take this node here, because that's bonus damage over time and shadow damage. But it's again shadow damage, shadow damage, shadow damage, shadow damage. Might be taking this, or with the last 20 points of Paragon board that we're getting, I could also take the last glyph to then slam in a Exploit for really good bonus damage, or an Amplify for more curse damage. So another 10% multiplicative, or another 10% multiplicative. Probably the bonus vulnerable damage. I mean, we got Dex. Oh, wow. Dex. Ooh. Now, these changes truly supercharged the build even more and helped us to beat Uber Lilith at level 95. But the problem is the try was a little bit bugged/scuffed, and she died very unusually. So please watch this and tell me in the comments below, is this legit? Does this count?
A rough question, because like technically you want the Bone Storm for the time being, and we then just work on the cooldown rather than trying to extend it. Because right now, sure, we could extend it, like, see, that it just goes on for another few seconds. Oh, that is gonna be bad. I need to have more Bone Storm discipline in phase 2. Stop using it there. Okay, let's gather them all up around here. Need as many skeletons as possible in the first okay, we can stun him. No, what? There's another one. That's bullshit. We had it perfectly dodged. Everything was perfectly dodged. Oh, we got it. We got it. That's it. That's it. Now, what do you think? What's that? Did I kill her? Right, I got the reward, right? Does this count? Yeah, it does, right? Yeah, it should. Should it? 100% counts. But if you want to talk now about the future of Necro after season 1, because you might be facing quite some problems, check the video. Or if you're rather interested in the new Tempest Necro, which is an absolute dungeon storming dude, enjoy.